Corporate jargon and buzzwords make us feel more fancy and more important than we actually are. And I have observed that employees enjoy using buzzwords because who would not want to feel important? Human beings have a tendency to feel a sense of importance. We like to feel a sense of importance and we love to be perceived as high status. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. My name is Kian. I run a company focusing on corporate training, HR consulting, and employee engagement. We've worked with more than 20 companies, 10 of which or 15 of which are multinational companies. And we've also worked with more than 2,500 employees across 15 different countries. And this is what I have observed with employees: corporate jargon and buzzwords. So I was working with this client one time, and her role was an employee engagement role, and she was struggling to perform well. And when I was speaking with her, I realized that she could not describe her role and her responsibilities without using any buzzwords at all. So when I would say, hey, what do you do? It would be something along the lines of strategizing HR plans so that employees would be engaged. It would be something like optimizing engagement experience to ensure that employees were X, Y, and Z. Or it would be making data-driven decisions so that X, Y, Z. And I said, okay, these sound wonderful. May I also understand why you think you're hired by the company, or what is the significance of your role in the company? And again, it would be along the lines of strategizing, optimizing, streamlining, and so forth. And I said, okay, well, can you describe or verbalize your role in layman parlance or in observable verbs? What do you actually do? And she was struggling to do that. And as a result, she was not performing well, or I'd like to think that that was one of the main reasons that she was struggling to perform. Because if you don't know what you have to do, then how would you do it well? The likelihood of you performing well may as well be zero. It's kind of like if you say that, hey, I'm going to optimize my day tomorrow, and the next day starts, and I say, okay, well, it's 6 a.m. right now, or it's 8 a.m. right now. What are you going to do right now? I'm going to optimize my day. What does that even mean? What's the next thing that you will literally do? If you're not able to define that, then you do not really have clear conditions of failure and success. You don't know when you would have failed and when you would have succeeded. At least if you say that tomorrow, the first thing I'll do is brush my teeth. It's an observable verb, brushing your teeth. And so if you brush your teeth at, say, 6 a.m., which is the time that you set, for example, then hey, you have succeeded. Whereas if you're still in bed at 6 a.m., then you have not succeeded. So with that employee that we were working with the client, I did my best to ensure that all the terms that would later be expressed by her were observable verbs. So as a result, from strategizing, optimizing, streamlining, it became something like, well, strategizing employee engagement experience. What that would mean, or that could have meant, is that if you have 6 employee engagement experience sessions that you would run, then at which time of the year should you have each session? So if you know, for example, that January to March tend to be the busiest period for the company because of financial closing or whatever, then it would make sense to have the session that takes up the least amount of time for the employees. Or it could even be that in one of those weekends you have something that's really fun so that people could let their hair down and miss the busy times. Whichever rationale you think would work best for your own employees. And when it comes to optimizing engagement experience, it's more of understanding your employees and team members. Because if you know that you have a team that's really sporty, outgoing, they enjoy outdoors, then it wouldn't make sense to have an employee engagement experience in the library, because then it's not optimal for the team. It's not something that the team enjoys. And as far as data-driven decision making, it would be understanding more about the employee so that you have data to work with. And data could be in the form of questionnaire. Maybe you could administer a questionnaire where everyone shares a little bit about their personal information, their habits, likings, and so forth, so that based on everything that you have received about the employee, you could make a decision that would be aligned with your interests. So again, if you know that everyone likes to be outdoors, then you could have experiences and sessions where we go out of the office. On the other hand, if everyone tends to be introverted and they enjoy indoor activities, then it makes more sense to have something that would not allow for a lot of physical movements, because that would be the best for the employees. But data-driven or data does not just have to be formal data like questionnaire. It could really even be you as a HR person speaking and chatting with your employees and saying, hey, I noticed that you carry a badminton racket all the time. Is badminton your favorite sport? And if they say yes, then you can understand that, oh, this person probably is someone who is more sporty. Or if you have lunch with someone and you just casually ask, oh, what do you like to do on the weekend? And they share with you, these could also be data. So data does not just have to be formal data. Informal conversations are also great places from which you collect data. And so the key message that I want to share is that when you're assigned a role or that you're employed by a company or a person, you want to make sure that you're able to define your roles and responsibilities in observable verbs. And the same goes to if you're trying to set a goal, because if your terms are vague and abstract and you're not able to define them in a way that you will know what to do immediately after you have read the role, then it's not good. Because if you don't know what to do, how are you going to succeed? If you know what to do and you know when you have done it or not, then your conditions of success and failure are very clear. So for example, if you know to define the sentence optimizing engagement experience to conducting a session that everybody enjoys, and you know that half of the employees don't enjoy that session that you have organized as a HR or employee engagement person, then you know that you have not succeeded. And Dr. Jordan Peterson has said that sometimes people intentionally make their goals and roles unclear because they're afraid that if they make them clear, then they would have to suffer from the consequences of experiencing failure. But I would like to think that experiencing the immediate consequence of failure is more favorable than if you realize that you fail only 10 years down the line. Because can you imagine, it's only after 10 years that you realize that you have done nothing at all. That pain is probably going to be more prominent than the former, where you experience a quick piece of feedback that you have failed so that you know that you should change right now and so that you don't repeat the mistake. Because problems delayed are problems multiplied and amplified. And we want to make sure that when we do something wrong, we can ameliorate and rectify that immediately. So again, this is something that I think is really important for employees to realize. Yes, buzzwords and jargon make you seem more important and fancy, and you probably don't want to define what you do in terms that seem overly simple, like organizing a party for employees. But if you're going to use buzzwords, then you want to make sure that you understand those buzzwords. Otherwise, stick to simple terms so that you know what it is that you have to do. And because if you know what it is that you have to do, then the likelihood of you succeeding would be high because you know what you have to do. And so you can find ways to do the thing well. And with that, I hope you enjoyed the video and learned something helpful. And do subscribe and like, and I'll see you in the next one.